There is a house at the end of Coulter Road that the county has appraised 4 times in the last 30 years, and 4 times the appraisal has never been finished. Nobody in the town of Ashford Hollow will tell you why. Ask at the diner, and the waitress will refill your coffee and change the subject. Ask the old men outside the hardware store, and they'll look at each other first, as if checking whether it's safe to remember. The house is just there, at the top of a gravel drive, white paint gone the color of old teeth, and everyone in town has agreed, without ever saying so out loud, that the safest thing to do with the Whitlock house is to stop thinking about it the moment you look away. Daniel Reyes did not grow up in Ashford Hollow, and so he did not know to be afraid. He was 34 years old, 3 months divorced, and good at his job in the specific way that men become good at jobs they no longer care about. He appraised properties for a regional bank that had inherited the Whitlock house through a foreclosure so old the paperwork had yellowed in the folder. Nobody had lived there in 11 years. Nobody had successfully appraised it in 30. It was, his supervisor told him over the phone, just a formality. Get in, get out, 4 hours tops. And there was something in the way she said it, too quickly, like a sentence she'd rehearsed, that Daniel didn't think about until much later, when thinking about it wouldn't do him any good at all. He arrived on a Tuesday in October, the kind of gray afternoon where the light never quite commits to being daylight. The gravel drive was longer than it looked from the road, curling up through a stand of dead elms whose branches had grown into each other overhead like fingers laced in prayer or in warning. The house waited at the top of the hill the way old houses do, not welcoming, not hostile, just patient, the way a thing waits when it has already decided how the visit is going to end. He remembered later that the front door was unlocked. He remembered that he found this strange for only a second before deciding it wasn't. And he remembered that the first sound he heard inside the house, before he'd even set down his clipboard, was the sound of someone upstairs, walking slowly across a floor that should have been empty for 11 years. He told himself it was settling. Old houses settled. He climbed the stairs anyway. The upstairs hallway smelled like dust and something underneath the dust, something Swedish and faintly wrong, the smell of a refrigerator that has been unplugged a long time. There were 4 doors. 3 stood open. 1 did not. Daniel is not, by nature, a man who opens closed doors in empty houses, but he had a clipboard in his hand and a job to finish, and the closed door had a brass number screwed into it, a 5, tarnished nearly black, which struck him as odd because the house had no other room numbered anything. Houses aren't numbered room by room. Hotels are. He opened it anyway. Inside was a bedroom no larger than a closet, containing a single iron bed frame with no mattress, a washstand with a cracked basin, and on the wall opposite the door, a mirror gone cloudy with age. In the mirror, for exactly as long as it took his heart to skip once and recover, Daniel saw the reflection of a woman standing behind him in the doorway. He turned. The doorway was empty. When he looked back at the mirror, so was it. He stood very still for a while, telling himself the story every rational man tells himself in that moment. Trick of the light, exhaustion, low blood sugar, a life recently unraveled by divorce and grief, and the particular loneliness of 40-hour weeks spent driving to other people's houses. He wrote room 5, irregular numbering, possible former boarding house use in his notes, because writing things down has always been how frightened men convince themselves they are only observing, not experiencing. Then he went downstairs to find the fuse box, and that was when he found the ledger. It was in the pantry, wedged behind a shelf of mason jars gone furred with mold, bound in leather that had cracked into a map of dry riverbeds. The handwriting inside was upright and careful, the penmanship of someone raised to believe that a straight line was a moral virtue. It was a guest register. Names, dates, room numbers. The earliest entry was from 1931. The house, it seemed, had once been a boarding house, the kind that took in traveling salesmen, widows with nowhere else to go, men between jobs and men between lives. Daniel flipped forward through the decades, and somewhere in the middle of the ledger, he noticed the pattern that would not let him sleep that night, or several nights after. Every few years, a name appeared with no checkout date beside it, just an arrival, and then a blank column, forever. Eleanor Voss, room 5. Arrived March 4th, 1958. No departure. Walter Priam, room 5. Arrived September 11th, 1971. No departure. 7 names in all, spanning 5 decades, every one of them assigned to the same room. The room with the number screwed onto the door, the room with the mirror. He should have left then. He has said as much since to the 2 people who ever got him to talk about it. But there is a specific arrogance that comes with being a man who fixes numbers to things for a living, who believes that anything can be explained if you are patient and thorough enough, and Daniel Reyes possessed that arrogance in generous supply. He photographed the ledger. He told himself he would hand it over to the bank, to the county historian, to somebody whose job it was to care. He did not yet understand that some houses do not release what they've taken just because a stranger writes it down. Outside, the light had gone the color of a bruise. He had been in the house for 3 hours. He had told himself he would be out in 4. He was not out in 4. The first thing that convinced Daniel he wasn't imagining things was the temperature in the east hallway, which dropped so suddenly and so precisely, as if he'd stepped through a doorway into another season, that he actually looked for a window left open. There wasn't one. The cold sat in a band no wider than 6 feet, and when he stepped through it, on the other side, the house smelled different, cleaner, like soap and wood smoke, and something baking, like a house that was lived in. He heard faintly a radio playing something with horns in it, the kind of big band static-laced music that hadn't been new in 80 years. He followed the sound to the parlor, where the furniture he'd cataloged that morning as water-damaged, non-salvageable now sat upholstered and clean, and a woman in a high-collared dress was setting 2 teacups on a table, her back to him, humming along with the radio. "Excuse me," Daniel said, because some instinct even older than fear insisted on politeness. The woman turned. She had no eyes. Where they should have been, there was only smooth skin, undisturbed, as if they had simply never been given to her, and yet she looked at him. He would never be able to explain how he knew she was looking at him. He only knew that she was, and that she smiled warmly, the way you'd smile at a guest you'd been expecting for a very long time. "You're early," she said. "Checkout isn't until Friday." And then the parlor was empty again, and cold, and full of dust, and the radio static faded into the ordinary silence of an abandoned house, and Daniel Reyes was on his knees on the floor without any memory of having fallen. He ran for the front door. This is the part of the story where a different kind of man might have made it out, and Daniel has wondered about that version of himself more times than he'd like to admit. The Daniel who simply left, who called the bank from his car and quit the job and never spoke of Coulter Road again. But the front door, when he reached it, opened onto a hallway he did not recognize, one that should not have existed inside the house's modest footprint, lined with doors going back farther than the house's exterior walls could possibly allow. Every door had a brass number. He counted 11 before he stopped counting. It was then, standing in that impossible hallway, that Daniel understood the thing the town of Ashford Hollow had agreed, silently, never to say aloud. The Whitlock house was not haunted in the way people mean when they say a place has a ghost in it, a single sad spirit wandering a single sad hallway. The Whitlock house was a boarding house still open for business. It had never once stopped taking guests. It simply stopped letting anyone see them check out. He thought of the ledger, 7 names with no departure date. He thought of his supervisor's voice on the phone. Get in, get out, 4 hours tops, and the strange rehearsed quickness of it, and he understood with the cold, complete clarity that only arrives when it is far too late to be useful, that he had not been sent here to appraise a property. He had been sent here to be appraised. What happened over the following hours, Daniel has only ever described in fragments and never twice the same way, which is itself the sort of detail that makes the story worse rather than better. He remembers running. He remembers a hallway that rearranged itself behind him the way a dream does, so that running away from something and running toward it stopped being different acts. He remembers finding, at the end of one hallway, a door with no number at all, and behind it, an office, a front desk, absurdly, complete with a bell to ring for service, and behind the desk, in the receiving twilight, an old man in a boarding housekeeper's cardigan who looked at Daniel with an expression of genuine, almost fatherly sympathy. "You found the register?" the old man said. It wasn't a question. Daniel could not speak. He nodded. "Then you already know how this works," the old man said, not unkindly. "This house has always needed guests, son. It gets lonely, same as anybody. Every few years it gets to choosing again. It picked a widow once, a soldier, a door-to-door salesman who thought he was too clever to stay anywhere longer than a night." He folded his hands on the desk, the way a man folds his hands when he is about to deliver news he's delivered before and will deliver again. "It picked you the moment you walked up that drive without asking anybody in town what happened to the last appraiser." The last appraiser. Daniel had not asked. He had not thought to ask. In all the paperwork, in all the bank's brisk insistence that this was routine, nobody had told him there had been a last appraiser at all. "Where is he?" Daniel managed. The old man only gestured gently toward the long hallway of numbered doors behind him and said, with something that might almost have been pity, "Room's already made up for you too if you'd like to see it. Number's the only thing that changes." Daniel Reyes did not stay to see his room. What he did instead, and this is the part of the story that Ashford Hollow will still not discuss above a whisper, the part that reached the county paper only as a single unexplained paragraph about a disoriented man found walking the interstate shoulder 11 miles from town with no memory of the drive, was run, blind and directionless, through doors that should not have connected to one another, through cold that came and went in bands, past a parlor where a woman without eyes was pouring a second cup of tea for a guest who had not yet arrived, until he burst through a door that gave, at last, onto the ordinary gray October afternoon he'd started in, the dead elms overhead, the gravel drive stretching back down to the road exactly as long as it had been when he'd arrived, though his watch, when he could finally bring himself to look at it, told him he had been inside for 6 days. He drove until the gaslight came on. He has never gone back for his car's registration, still sitting in the glove box with the Whitlock address written on the intake form. He quit the bank 2 weeks later, took a job 3 states away that has nothing to do with houses, and does not, if he can avoid it, drive down long gravel roads at dusk. He kept one thing from inside the house. He has shown it to exactly 2 people, and both of them, afterward, asked him not to bring it into their homes again. It's a page torn from the ledger. The handwriting is upright, careful, the penmanship of someone who believed a straight line was a moral virtue. Daniel Reyes, Room 5. Arrived October 14th. The departure column is blank. He tells himself this doesn't mean anything. He tells himself the same thing every appraiser before him must have told himself, standing at the top of that gravel drive with a clipboard in hand and 4 confident hours ahead of him. He tells himself he got out. But the county has still never received a completed appraisal for the house on Coulter Road, and the bank, when pressed, will only say that the file has been reassigned and is currently pending. Pending whom, nobody at the bank has ever quite been able to say.